Hello everyone. So before we proceed with the lecture, let me just take a technical poll for you people. Quickly answer me through the technical poll whether my audio is clear, my screen is visible to you people. So I'm launching the technical poll. Okay, so today's topic is chemical coordination and integration. So this is a pre-reading question. It says, in human adults, female oxytocin. Option number 1 is secreted by anterior pituitary. Option number 2 stimulates growth of mammary glands. Option number 3 stimulates pituitary to secrete vasopressin. Option number 4 causes strong uterine contraction during pituitration. So it's already a pre-reading question. You can easily answer me because you have already attended the previous classes. So I'm launching the poll, MCQ poll. In human adults, okay, they're talking about the female, they're talking about the oxytocin. You can remember the hypothalamus gland, which secretes the two hormones which are stored in the posterior part of the pituitary gland. Do you remember? 20 seconds left. Student, quickly answer me. Do you remember the function of oxytocin? It performs two functions. Twenty seconds left, students. Quickly. Okay. So the correct option is D, causes strong uterine contraction during parturition. So in humans, the adult female So in human, the adult female, they secrete oxytocin. So oxytocin is basically secreted by a hypothalamus gland. It's secreted by the hypothalamus gland and it stores in the posterior part of the pituitary gland. Do you remember the pituitary gland has two parts, the anterior and the posterior, and the posterior part is known as neurohypophysis. And this oxytocin, it performs two functions. Number one is your milk ejection. And the second one is the contraction of the uterine muscles. Second option is contraction of the uterine muscles. So now let's see with the option number 1. So it is secreted by anterior pituitary. It's the wrong because it's not secreted by anterior pituitary. It is secreted by hypothalamus and it stores in the posterior pituitary. So anterior pituitary does not play any role here. Okay. It stimulates the growth of mammary gland. No, it does not. That function is done by prolactin. Okay. And the third option is stimulates pituitary to secrete vasopressin. That is also wrong. Vasopressin is also produced by hypothalamus and stored in pituitary. But oxytocin does not secrete vasopressin. Okay. Is that clear? That option D is the correct option. It causes the strong uterine contraction, that the uterine muscles, they are contracted so the baby can move out. Okay. Is that clear? Fine. Let's move to the next pre-reading question. It says, which of the following pairs of hormones are not antagonistic, having opposite effect? So antagonistic means that have opposite effect. Okay, like left, right, north, south, opposite. Okay, so the question is asking which of the following pairs of hormone. Okay, they're asking about the pair of hormones which are not, and emphasize on not. Okay, they're asking about not having opposite effects to each other. So option 1 is your parathermone, calcitonin. Option B is insulin, glucagon. Option 3 is aldosterone and the natriuretic factor. And the option D is relaxin and the inhibin. Okay, so I'm launching the poll for you people. Quickly answer me through the poll. The question is asking about the pair of hormones which are not antagonistic. That means which are not having an opposite effects. This we have already discussed in the previous classes. All the hormones. They're very easy. You can easily remember which glands they secrete. Oh, sorry, through which glands these hormones are secreted. What are their functions? Okay, 20 seconds left, student. Quickly answer me. Okay, so let me discuss with you. So the correct option for this question is option number D, that is relaxin. That is relaxin and inhibin. Because relaxin is a hormone which is secreted by the placenta. And its function is to dilate the cervix, is to dilate the cervix so that baby can easily move out. It helps in childbirth. Inhibin is a hormone which is secreted by the ovaries, and its function is to inhibit FSH, which is your follicle stimulating hormone. Okay, so they are not their functions are not antagonistic. They're not having an opposite effect. So let's discuss the other option. Parathyroid is a hormone which is secreted by a parathyroid gland, and its function is to increase the level of calcium in the blood. So it's increase the level of calcium in the blood. Whereas calcitonin is secreted by a gland, which is a thyroid gland, and its function is to decrease the level of the calcium in the body. Okay, so how the calcitonin works? Basically, calcitonin, when it's secreted by the thyroid gland, it all collects all the calcium from the blood and transfer it to the bone. So it functions basically involved in bone strengthening. It strengthens your bones. Or whereas parathyroid hormone or parahormone, which is secreted by the parathyroid gland, it increases the level of calcium in the body by causing demineralization of the bone. Okay, so it's a reabsorption of the bone occurred by the parathyroid gland or by the parathyroid hormone. Insulin is secreted by the beta cell of the pancreas, and these beta cell, they function in, and this insulin hormone, it decreases the glucose level in the blood. So it's decreasing the glucose level. Whereas glucagon, it increases the glucose level in the blood. And glucagon is secreted by the alpha cells. You remember that pancreas, it's a composite gland. It performs two functions like exocrine and endocrine. And the endocrine gland, there has an islet of Langerhans. And they further have the 4 types of cells: the alpha cell, beta cell, F cell, del cell. Remember that? The beta cell will secrete the insulin hormone, and there's an alpha cell will secrete the glucagon hormone. So let's come to the third option, we say aldosterone. So aldosterone function is to maintain the electrolyte balance, and it also function is to stimulate the reabsorption of the sodium ions. So it increases the sodium ion absorption in the it increases the sodium ion reabsorption. Whereas the atrial natriuretic factor, which is secreted by the walls of the heart, its function is to reduce the blood pressure, but simultaneously it also stimulates the excretion of the sodium in kidney. So it basically lowering the sodium level in the kidney. Whereas aldosterone is increasing the sodium level because it is increasing the reabsorption of the sodium and the water, and also stimulate the excretion of the potassium ions and the phosphate ions. So all the, like option number 1, option number 2, option number 3, they are all performing the antagonistic function. But there's option number D, which is not performing the antagonistic function. That is not having an opposite effect. So correct option is option number D. Now moving ahead. So today we are going to discuss gonad. Generally we have two types of gonad, that is testis, the main gonad, and the ovary, which is your female gonad. So this one is the ovary and this one is the testis. The testis, it performs dual function. Firstly, it's a male gonad and it performs dual function. Dual function means it performs two functions. Firstly, it acts as a male primary sex organ, and secondly, it acts as an endocrine gland. Okay, and second point says a pair of testes is present in a scrotal sac. This is your scrotal. This one is a scrotal sac. This scrotal sac, it lies outside the abdomen. When I say it lies outside the abdomen, why? Because it's to maintain the 2 to 2.5 degree less temperature as compared to the body temperature. That is why the testis lies in the scrotal sac and the scrotal sac lies outside the abdomen. Testis is composed of seminiferous tubule and the stromal tissue or the interstitial tissues. This is your seminiferous tubule. Seminiferous tubule main function is to spermatogenesis. So it plays a very important role in spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis is basically the formation of spermatozoa. Okay, and the latex cells in the intertubular space, they produce hormone called androgen, and the main hormone is the testosterone. So testosterone is the main hormone which is secreted by the latex cell. Let me just draw a flowchart for you people. The testis, they composed of seminiferous tubule and the stromal tissue. Seminiferous tubule, they play a very important role in spermatogenesis. That is the formation of spermatozoa. And the latex cell, they secrete a hormone which is an androgen hormone, and we mainly discuss about testosterone. Is that clear? Okay, moving next. There are some functions of the androgen. Number 1, it regulates the development, maturation, and the function of accessory sex organs. So it regulates development, maturation, and function of the accessory sex organ. Second function is the spermatogenesis. That is the sperm production or the formation of the spermatozoa. And this spermatogenesis, it takes place in seminiferous tubule, which I have already told you. Third is it stimulates sexual behavior. And the fourth one is it also stimulates the growth of muscles, hairs, aggressiveness, and low-pitched voice. These are the secondary sexual characters of the male. And the growth of it, as I say, it stimulates the growth of muscles. So this hormone is anabolic in nature. Because it's stimulating the growth of muscles, and it also helps in the anabolism of protein and carbohydrate. Neck gonad is the ovary. It is a female primary sex organ. Pair of ovaries located in the abdomen. So where the ovaries are located, it is located in the abdomen. It produces one ovum during each menstrual cycle. And the ovary is composed of ovarian follicle and the stromal tissue. And these ovarian follicle, they produce a steroid hormone, which is estrogen, and they also produce a ovarian follicle, they produce a hormone, which is an estrogen, and this estrogen is a steroid hormone. Okay, is that clear? Now, moving ahead. This slide shows you a follicle phase and a luteal phase. So during the follicle phase, estrogen is synthesized and secreted by the ovarian follicle. And on the 14th day, when the ovarian follicle, the follicle rupture and the ovule is released, then this rupture follicle, it formed the corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum secrete a hormone, which is a progesterone. So progesterone basically supports pregnancy in female. So it's already written here, after ovulation, the rupture follicle forms a structure, which is a corpus luteum, and it secretes a hormone, which is a progesterone, a steroid hormone. Function of estrogen. It stimulates the growth and activity of female secondary sex organ. So it basically stimulates the growth and activity of female secondary sex organs and the development of an ovarian follicles. Female secondary sex characters like high-pitched voice and sexual behavior is also stimulated by estrogen and the development of the mammary glands. So these are the function of estrogen. Once it stimulates the growth and the activity of female secondary sex organs, development of ovarian follicles, development of mammary glands, and the female secondary sex characters, which are high-pitched voice and sexual behavior. Then the function of progesterone, which progesterone is secreted by the corpus luteum, where the estrogen is secreted by the ovarian follicle. And first, it supports pregnancy in females, and it acts on the mammary gland to stimulate the formation of alveoli, which are the sac of store milk, and help in milk secretion. So these are the alveoli. This is the alveolus, and the group is known as an alveoli. And these alveoli, they consist of lactocyte, and as the name suggests, lacto means milk. So these lactocytes, they are involved in milk secretion. I hope this is clear to you all. This is also a very important and a very good question. Match the source gland with respective hormone as well as the function correctly. Okay. So these are your source gland. Number 1 is your anterior pituitary. Number 2 is your posterior pituitary. Number 3 is the corpus luteum, and D is thyroid. And these are the hormone: oxytocin, vasopressin, estrogen, thyroxine. And all the functions are given on the right-hand side, which is number 1 is the contraction of uterus muscles during childbirth, stimulate reabsorption of water in the distal tubules in the nephron. Number 3 supports pregnancy, and number 4 is regulate blood calcium level. Okay. So it's a very important question as it summarizes your lot of hormones and their function and the source of gland. So let me launch a poll. Quickly answer me through the poll. So which is the correct option? Quickly answer me, everybody. It's very easy. You can easily find out. The source gland is given, the hormones are given, and the functions are given. So which one is the correctly matched? Okay, everybody has answer. Okay, so the correct option for this is option number B. Option B is your correct option. Okay, let me discuss this with you. First says anterior pituitary, hormone oxytocin, function contraction of uterus muscles during childbirth. Okay, oxytocin hormone, correct. Function contraction of uterus muscles during childbirth, correct. But the source is not anterior pituitary. The source is hypothalamus. It is secreted in hypothalamus but stored in posterior part of the pituitary, which is your neurohypophysis. Okay, now let's come to option number 2, which says posterior pituitary. Posterior pituitary, correct source gland. As we have already discussed, this oxytocin and vasopressin, they both are stored in posterior pituitary but are synthesized by hypothalamus. So posterior pituitary, the source of gland, is correct. Hormone vasopressin, correct. Stimulate the reabsorption of water in the distal tubule in the nephron, absolutely correct. Okay, they stimulate the reabsorption of the water and the sodium and prevent the loss of the water from the urine. Third is corpus luteum. Corpus luteum, source of gland. Hormone is not estrogen, hormone is progesterone. This I have just told you, progesterone, estrogen. Estrogen is secreted by ovarian follicle. Progesterone is secreted by corpus luteum. And progesterone support pregnancy. So this one is correct. But the hormone is not correct. So this is also not a correct option. Thyroid, source of gland. Hormone, thyroxine, regulates blood calcium level. Thyroxine does not regulate the blood calcium level, students. It's calcitonin, which regulates your blood calcium level. Okay, so this is also wrong. So the correct option is option number B. I hope this is clear. Now, moving ahead. So there are some tissues which secretes the hormone, but they are not endocrine in nature. Okay, some tissues, they secrete hormone, but are not endocrine in nature. So number 1 is the atrial wall of heart. It secretes a hormone, which is atrial natriuretic factor. So when the blood pressure increases in the body, this ANF, it causes dilation of the blood vessels and it reduces your blood pressure. Okay, so it's sick. So atrial wall of heart, it secrete a hormone which is your atrial natriuretic factor, and its function is to dilate the blood vessels in order to reduce the blood pressure. You can clearly see in the image on your left hand side, this is your vasoconstriction. Okay, the lumen of the vessel is decreasing, but here is a vasodilation. The lumen of the vessel is increasing so that a large amount of blood can flow and it can lower the blood pressure. I hope this is clear to you. Okay, moving ahead. This slide shows you the juxtaglomerular apparatus of kidney. So this is the juxtaglomerular apparatus, and this is your granular juxtaglomerular cells. So these cells, they secrete erythropoietin hormone, which is a peptide hormone. And what is the function of this hormone is erythropoiesis. as the name suggests, it's very clear, erythro, that's your RBC. So formation of your RBC is this process is known as erythropoiesis, like formation of your RBC. Okay, you can see that hematopoietic cell, then bursting forming unit erythroid, then colonies form, then erythroblast, then reticulocytes, and finally is your erythrocytes, the mature RBCs. Okay. Now, there are endocrine cells in the gastrointestinal tract which secrete some peptide hormone. Number one is a gastrin. Gastrin is secreted by the G cells of the stomach, and this stimulates the gastric juice, which includes your HCl and pepsinogen. So when you eat the food, your stomach secretes the gastric juice for the digestion, so that HCl can act, and HCl can activate the other enzyme like pepsinogen. Okay, so pepsinogen can convert into an active form, which is pepsin. Okay, so now the second hormone is secretin. Secretin is the first hormone to be discovered. And stimulate the exocrine pancreas to secrete water and bicarbonate. Okay, let me just draw a flowchart for you. Food plus your gastric juice, which is secreted by the gastrin. Now your food is acidic in nature. Okay, so to neutralize this acidic food, secretin, it stimulates the pancreas to secrete water and bicarbonate. So here the secretin, which is secretin is produced in duodenum of the small intestine. Okay, so once your food, the acidic food, reaches the small intestine, this secretin is produced by the duodenum, which acts on the exocrine pancreas and secrete water and bicarbonate plus water in order to neutralize this food, this acidic food. Number 3 is your gastric inhibitory peptide hormone, which inhibits the gastric secretion. So it's very simple, as the name suggests, gastric inhibitory peptide. So that means it's working something related to inhibit the gastric secretion. Okay. Now your fourth one is cholecystokinin, which is also abbreviated as CCK. It stimulates the secretion of the bile from your gallbladder and the pancreatic enzyme from the pancreas. Okay, so gastrointestinal tract, there's 4 hormones. Number 1 is your gastrin. Number 2 is your secretin. Number 3 is your gastric inhibitory peptide. Number 4 is your cholecystokinin. So secretin, gastric inhibitory peptide, and cholecystokinin, they are produced by duodenum in the small intestine, whereas gastrin is secreted by the G cell of the stomach. So there are several other non-endocrine tissues which secrete hormones, and theirs are growth hormones. So their main function is in growth. Okay, and these are essential for the normal growth of tissue and their repairing or regeneration. For example, this is your growth factor. This one is your receptor. Once your growth factor binds with the receptor, it gives the signals to some secondary messenger, then they carry the signal, or the amplification of signal takes place. Okay, and the signal keep on moving further and further, or they act as an intercellular messenger from one cell to the next cell. Okay, this is how the growth factor work, and this is how the growth, or it can lead to a biochemical process which cumulatively result in the physiological response, which is your growth. Okay. So on the basis of chemical nature of the hormones, okay, on the basis of the chemical nature, whether they are peptide, proteinaceous in nature, whether they are lipid in nature, we have divided the hormones into 4 types. Number 1 is the peptide, polypeptide, protein hormones, example insulin, glucagon, pituitary hormone, hypothalamic hormones. Okay, all these are your proteinaceous hormone. Second one is your steroid hormone, which are cortisol, testosterone, progesterone, estradiol. And the third one is your iodothyronines, which are your thyroid hormones. And the fourth one is the amino acid derivative, the adrenaline or non-adrenaline. So this hormone is proteinaceous in nature. Steroid are your lipid. Iodothyronines, they are also lipid in nature. Amino derivative, as the name suggests, you know that the monomeric unit of protein is amino acid. So ये भी proteinaceous ही कह लो. So this slide shows you the interaction between the hormones and their receptor. So hormone produce their effect by binding to the specific proteins, which are those hormone receptor, which are located in the target tissues. So this is your target cell. Okay. This is the membrane of the target cell. And this is the steroid hormone. As you know, the steroid hormones, they are lipid in nature. And you know the plasma membrane, they are bilipid in nature. Okay. So steroid hormone is also lipid. Plasma membrane is hydrophobic, lipid bilayer. So these lipid molecules, they can easily enter into the cell. That is why all the steroid hormones, they have intracellular receptor. Intra, as the name suggests, within the cell. Okay. So steroid hormone, the receptor are present within the cell. So here's the receptor. This is the receptor. So hormone binds to a specific receptor to form a hormone receptor complex. So once the hormone binds with the receptor, they form a complex. And the complex is known as a hormone receptor complex. And this complex, it leads to a biochemical changes in the target tissues, which regulates the metabolism and the physiological function. Okay, so this complex, then it interact and it leads to a biochemical process in the target, many biochemical changes in the target tissues, and all these biochemical changes, they collectively regulate the metabolism and the physiological function of the body. Okay, this slide shows that the hormone receptor are of 2 types. Number 1 is the membrane-bound receptor, and the second one is intracellular receptor, which I have just told you. Okay, you remember I told you that on the basis of the chemical nature, the hormones is of 2 types. One is steroid or lipid, and the other one is proteinaceous in nature or peptide. All the steroid hormone, they have intracellular receptor. And why they have intracellular receptor? Because they are lipid in nature, and the plasma membrane is also lipid bilayer in nature. And the peptide hormone, they have membrane-bound receptor. Why they have membrane-bound receptor? Because plasma membrane is lipid bilayer in nature, and your peptide is made up of the monomeric unit, which is an amino acid. And amino acid, they're hydrophilic in nature. Okay, they're hydrophilic in nature. So if a molecule is hydrophilic, cannot pass through a hydrophobic lipid bilayer plasma membrane. So they need a receptor. So the receptor for the peptide hormone, they are present in a membrane and they are known as membrane-bound receptor. So this is your peptide hormone. This receptor is present in the membrane itself and it's a membrane-bound receptor. Whereas this one is your steroid hormone and the receptor is present within the cell in the cytosol of the cell. So it's an intracellular receptor. It's very important, this topic, mechanism of hormone, very, very important. You will definitely get one question in NEET from this topic. Do prepare it well. Membrane-bound hormone, membrane-bound receptor. So in this slide, we are going to discuss the membrane-bound receptor as well as the peptide hormone, because we know that only the peptide hormone, they have the membrane-bound receptor. So some hormones, example, protein hormone or the follicle stimulating hormone, they interact with the membrane-bound receptor. So this is your follicle stimulating hormone or the protein hormone. This protein hormone, it interacts with the receptor. The receptor is the membrane-bound receptor. And once this hormone interacts with the receptor, it generates a response. So that is response number 1. And this response is carried forward and leads to the generation of a secondary messenger, which can either be a cyclic AMP or a calcium. So this is response number 2. And all these responses, they lead to biochemical changes. Okay, and all these changes cumulatively result in a physiological response, which is the ovarian growth. Because follicle stimulated hormone, it plays a very important role in ovarian follicle development. Is that clear? Next slide is same to the previous slide. The hormone, which is a follicle stimulating hormone, it binds to the receptor. Here's your receptor binding to the receptor, which further activates the G protein, and the G protein activates the adenyl cyclase, which activate or leads to the production of a cyclic AMP. And this cyclic AMP further activate the protein kinase. There's a cascade of signaling is taking place, okay, from one molecule to next, which activate the specific enzyme and convert the substrate into product and finally leads to the physiological response. This is your intracellular receptor, which I have already told you, the steroid hormone, they have an intracellular receptor where the hormone binds the receptor which lies in the cytosol or the cytoplasm of the cell. And this receptor, once it interacts with the hormone, it moves into the nucleus where it interacts with the DNA or the genome of the cell, leads to the formation of mRNA and the proteins. And finally, that proteins leads to the physiological response. That is tissue growth and differentiation. Okay. This is your extracellular fluid, the outer side of the cell. It shows this. This is your hormone. Let's take it example as estrogen. When the estrogen molecule enters into the intracellular receptor, it binds with the hormone binds with the intracellular receptor. It forms a hormone receptor complex. This receptor, again, hormone complex, this whole complex enters into the nucleus of the cell, interacts with the genome, interacts with the DNA, leads to the transcription, mRNA is formed, then proteins are formed, which leads to physiological responses. Okay? I hope this is clear. I've already discussed all the mechanism with you people. Thank you. And do read NCERT, try to do more previous year question paper, okay?